We're going to bring in today's political panel now, a combination spanning the House and the Senate, New South Wales and South Australia. Joining us, Labor MP for Hunter, Dan Repicoli. Welcome, Dan. And South Australian Liberal frontbencher Anne Rusden is back too and coming from Melbourne today. Welcome to you too. And why don't we start out on the CFMEU if we can. And Dan, we'll kick off with you. Obviously, the National Office of the Union thought they might be able to tough this out by administering the Victorian branch itself. That's not going to cut it with your government, obviously. Starting in your home state, do you call on the Secretary in that state, Darren Greenfield, to now quit?
Look, Greg, the main thing that unions do is keep workers safe, and that's what unions are there for, and that's what they're there. They're there for their members. They're there to make sure there's good, safe, secure employment and conditions for that workforce. So the big thing is that we make sure that unions keep doing that, and unfortunately, through what has been reported for the CFMEU, the Victorian branch, the construction side of things on the Victorian branch, this hasn't been the case. So we'll see what happens in the future on this, but the main job of the unions is to make sure it's looking after its members and having good, safe working conditions.
Well, it's certainly spreading far and wide and pretty quickly too. And we'll bring you in now. Your side is obviously asking or demanding that deregistration. Can you address the question that we put to others today? What makes you think that is the ultimate power? As once it was, but is it still?
Well, look, obviously something needs to be done, and I mean, we just see episode after episode of this really tawdry story unfold before us, and, you know, this afternoon we've seen the ACTU having to take action. But I think the thing that Australians should be most distressed about is clearly the government, both in Victoria and the federal government, has known about this situation for some time, and it takes it to be on the front page of the paper before anything is done about it. But I mean, I wouldn't just be calling for the deregistration, I'd be calling for the reinstatement of the ABCC because we need to have an independent, honest cop on the block. Clearly, unions like the CFMEU can't be trusted to operate in an environment unless they've got somebody regulating and overseeing what they're doing.
You've been pretty familiar, Dan, throughout your working career and now as a parliamentarian with industrial workplaces and the unions that operate within them. To Anne's point, why didn't the authorities, the relevant authorities here, pick up on this? Why did it finally fall to the media to expose it?
Look, I'm a proud union member of the mighty Mining and Energy Union, and many other people around here in the Hunter are as well, and they look after people's workplaces in this area and the workers in those workplaces. So we need to make sure we continue that, and let's not beat around the bush here either, Greg. The opposition will cut down a union and a union member wherever they can. They've always been against unions, and that is just part of their DNA, where fortunately for us, we care for workers' rights and we really push hard on workers' rights. So that's why unions are so important to us and so important to people like myself in this area.
Yeah, you're calling it now the Mining and Energy Union, Dan. What does that acknowledge? Does that recognise in your own mind that construction is never coming back into the fold from here?
Well, the Mining Energy Union, Greg, broke away from the CFMEU late last year. That happened. So they've been on their own for quite a while now and doing good things for its members.
All right, yeah, no, there's no talk of it re-merging, but the title still stands there all the same. And this legislation, if it comes to it, the government will legislate to force this external administrator to come in. Are there extra conditions that the coalition would attach to its support for that bill? It may not come to it, but if that bill comes forward?
Well, as I said, I think the most important thing is that we get the tough cop back on the beat. I mean, I can't believe that, you know, that the Albanese government's first action was to get rid of the ABCC, and in a matter of a couple of years, we've seen this unfold in Australian workplaces. So I'd be saying that, you know, there needs to be a suite of measures. We need to pass the integrity bill to make sure that registered organisations are operating in the best interests of their members, not in the best interests of their mates that are at the top of these organisations. So I think there's a suite of measures that we would be asking the government to put in place, because quite clearly as has been demonstrated over the last few weeks as this has unfolded, are needed.
All right, last word on this, Dan, to you, on that element, which clearly the Coalition's flagging it would like to reintroduce or see reintroduced, the Australian Building and Construction Commission. What would be wrong with putting it back on the beat as suggested here?
Greg, the ABCC did nothing for this issue at all. So for the opposition to come in and Anne to come in and say that, the ABCC would not do anything in this. This will go on and will be looked at by the Fair Work Commission, and if there has been fraudulent things happen, if they have done the wrong thing, then they should see the whole letter of the law sent to them, and that there is no doubt about that. But let's not forget, there are many, many unions out there that are doing the right thing by their workers and making sure that they've got good, safe, secure employment.
All right, let's move on, and I'll start with you on aged care, Anne Rusden, since this is very much in your wheelhouse. You might be familiar with a University of Technology Sydney study. This is through the Ageing Research Collaborative. It's found that 2/3 of profitable aged care homes in a recent period of 6 months didn't meet their mandatory care minutes that they're supposed to provide. I think the suggestion is that the government is paying its end of the bargain, but they're not upholding theirs. What should happen, Anne Rusden, in those circumstances?
Well, I don't think anybody should be surprised at the findings of this report, because we know that despite the best efforts, Australia's nursing homes just are not able to meet the mandated care minutes and the 24/7 nursing requirements that were expedited under this government. And, you know, I visit nursing homes every week. I was in one in my home state last week, and they are working so hard to try and get registered nurses. But we know that as of the start of the year, there were 6,000 registered nurses short. And in the last quarter of 2023, the government only managed to increase the registered nurses by 44. I mean, this is a workforce crisis, and unless we can fix the workforce crisis, nursing homes, no matter how hard they try, are not going to be able to meet these minutes. We need to do something about workforce.
Okay, so you're not critical of them. You're not suggesting, Anne, that there should be any sanction or clawback of the additional funding under these circumstances?
Well, what the report hasn't been reported is that how many nursing homes at the moment, despite still not being able to meet their care minutes, aren't even profitable. Many of them are using agency staff that are much, much more expensive than if they had employed staff. So I'm saying we need to make sure that Australians get the care that they need, but there is no point in mandating for something to happen when there simply isn't the workforce to deliver the services that are being mandated.
Yeah, you're right. It did focus, this study, on the profitable section of the aged care facilities, I guess. Dan Repicoli, what's the experience in your part of the world, whether it be through staffing shortages that are curtailing the care minutes or people just not providing it for any reason?
So the mandatory care minutes have added 3.6 million care minutes per day to aged care facilities, and that is fantastic, because we need to make sure that we're doing the best to look after elderly Australians in these homes. And I've visited many homes in the Hunter, in Singleton, in Cessnock, in Muswellbrook, and they are telling me that they are having some issues getting staff here and there, but that's in every single industry that we're talking with at the moment. We see this in all industries in the Hunter. So staffing is an issue, but we know that, and that's why we're working on that, to try and make staffing so that we can get more people into training. That's why we got the fee-free TAFE, to try and get more people into training and to more different areas of the workforce, so that we can make sure that we're meeting these mandated minutes and that people are getting the care they need.
Do you acknowledge, Anne Rusden, that this is going to take time? I mean, staffing is always a slow one to turn around, and let's face it, this bedevilled previous coalition government as well.
Look, absolutely, we acknowledge that workforce is a great challenge, and that's why we've been saying to the government, you need to put in place measures that support nursing homes to support the people that they look after, older Australians, instead of forcing on them these mandatory minutes that they can't meet, and forcing nursing homes into situations where, as I say, they're getting agency staff, they're losing money, because there are a lot more nursing homes in Australia right now losing money than are making money, and those few that are making money are inevitably making money because they simply can't get the nursing staff to meet those care minutes. It's a pretty sad indictment on the policy of this government that this is what we're talking about 2.5 years in.
Yeah, all right. Thank you for addressing that. I did find it a rather insightful piece of work done by UTS there. Let's move on to something I know you'll feel keenly, Dan. This is nuclear power. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you've had some coalition campaigners showing up finally in your part of the world where a site has been selected just beyond the borders of your own electorate. Chris Bowen today, Dan, spoke at the National Press Club. And he said that nuclear and renewables are simply incompatible. This was his assertion. That can't be true, though, can it, Dan, given that so many other countries that have nuclear power have integrated it in their grids with renewables as they emerge?
Well, straight away on this one, Greg, Liddell Power Station is in the Hunter electorate. So if the borders change and the boundaries change, it will go into Barnaby's later, but that's okay.
I stand corrected.
So right now it is definitely all mine, and we have had some visitors from the coalition there. They came in to talk to a group of 30 people at a luncheon. So if you ask me, that's not community consultation. That's talking to 30 National Party members that wanted to go see Barnaby Joyce and Ted O'Brien. So I really think it's a bit odd that they do that when they should be out there talking to people on the street, hearing what they have to say about nuclear power in the Hunter, because I know what I'm hearing and people are telling me that they don't want it here. There's already thousands of jobs planned for that site at Liddell Power Station, and what Ted O'Brien, Barnaby Joyce and Peter Dutton want to do is rip thousands of jobs straight out of the Hunter, and we don't want that, I can tell you. These are high-paying jobs, highly skilled jobs, and they will be great for our area. It's a real kick in the guts to the communities of Muswellbrook and Singleton that they're coming up here and just talking to party members.
All right, well, thank you very much for correcting my geography. I thought I had Liddell just across the line, but I'll stand corrected there. But just on that incompatibility argument as put forward by Chris Bowen, though, Dan, it can't be true on international experience, can it?
I haven't seen what Chris Bowen has said on that, so I would rather not comment on that. But we know the cheapest form of energy is renewable energy and gas, working together. Gas is the bridge to renewable energy in time. Yeah. These nuclear reactors won't be built in 30 years. Let's be realistic there. So we need to make sure that we're looking after Australians right now with their power needs, and nuclear definitely is not, because that will double their power bills. All
right, yeah, I think AEMO made a point earlier in the week about the transition from coal across to nuclear not being timely enough, and Rusden. But can I just get you to respond to that argument then, the one that I put to Dan from Chris Bowen today, that renewables and nuclear don't kind of go together in any energy mix? Is that proven?
Well, I mean, it's completely ridiculous. The experience for everywhere else in the world suggests that they work perfectly well together. And we've always said that a combination of nuclear as the firming agent, gas and renewables is the best future for Australia's energy. But, you know, it's quite ridiculous, and it's just another one of Chris Bowen's silly scare tactics to try and scare Australians. And you know, to be perfectly fair, Dan, I mean, you are perpetuating it by making the comments around, 30 years. And I don't know why you're denying your electorate the opportunity to actually have a discussion, because when Ted O'Brien was in your electorate yesterday, he didn't just meet with National Party donors at a lunch. He walked up and down the street, he met with your councillors, he met with your mayors, he met with local business people, all of which are really open to having a conversation. And I think you shouldn't deny the opportunity for your electorate to actually have a discussion about nuclear and put the evidence on the table and see what they really think when they're not being scared.
All right.
By
well, Anne Rusden, and you're definitely...
I'm certainly not denying that, Anne, at all. What I'm fighting for is the thousands of jobs that are already earmarked at Liddell that you guys are going to rip straight out of the Hunter with a plan that's really got no plan. No one knows how much this is going to cost. No one knows how long this is going to take, and ultimately no one knows what it's going to cost the taxpayer.
Dan, you got the last word today. We're going to wrap it up there. I think you both may have other places to be before too long. Thanking you, Dan Ripper-Colley and Anne Rusden. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.